They thought they had everything under control. In 1979, Japan was dealing with a killer who struck without warning, leaving dead people in remote villages and spreading fear across an entire island. The solution seemed obvious: fight nature with nature. Bring in a predator that eats snakes for breakfast. Release it on the island. Watch the problem disappear. What could possibly go wrong? Join us and let's find out what solved this great mystery. Let's go! Everything, as it turns out. 25 years later, the snake killers had won their battle, but the island lost the war. This is the story of how a brilliant plan became one of the most spectacular ecological disasters in modern history, and how it took 2 decades of relentless work to undo the damage. The Island of Fear. Amami Oshima sits in the subtropical waters between mainland Japan and Okinawa. Dense forests cover the mountains. Rivers cut through valleys. It should be paradise. But for the people living there in the late 1970s, it was a place where stepping into the wrong patch of grass could be your last mistake. The habu snake made sure of that. This wasn't some harmless garden snake. The habu belongs to the pit viper family, cousins to rattlesnakes and other seriously dangerous reptiles. Its venom attacks your blood cells and nervous system at the same time. The bite hurts immediately. Then the real problems start: tissue damage, internal bleeding. Without treatment, death. In 1980 alone, around 400 people got bitten. Several didn't make it home. Farmers working their fields, kids playing near the forest, elderly people walking to the market. The habu didn't discriminate. It struck fast, injected its venom, and disappeared back into the undergrowth. The worst part? Even though doctors had an antivenom that worked, it needed refrigeration to stay effective. Most bites happened in rural areas where electricity was scarce or non-existent. By the time victims reached a hospital with working refrigerators, the venom had already done too much damage. The antidote existed, but it might as well have been. Keep the voice steady and informative, with light emphasis on important facts. Use smooth pacing and make it feel like an expert guiding a tour of knowledge. Fast, aggressive, and equipped with a biological superpower that most animals would kill for: resistance to snake venom. Watch a mongoose fight a cobra and you'll see something that looks choreographed. The snake strikes. The mongoose dodges with movements so quick they blur. The snake tries again. The mongoose weaves left, then right, then strikes back at the perfect moment. It's like watching a professional fighter who never gets tired and never makes mistakes. That speed comes from millions of years of evolution. In their native habitats across South Asia, mongooses have been hunting snakes since long before humans showed up. They've perfected the technique. Their reflexes operate on a different timescale than most predators. When a snake's fangs shoot forward, the mongoose is already somewhere else. But speed alone wouldn't be enough if one good bite could end the fight. That's where the venom resistance comes in. Mongooses have specialized receptors that essentially neutralize the neurotoxins that would shut down another animal's nervous system. A cobra bite that would kill a dog in minutes might barely slow down a mongoose. It's not total immunity, but it's close enough to turn a death sentence into a minor inconvenience. The government looked at this animal and saw the perfect solution. It hunted snakes. It could survive their venom. It had successfully controlled snake populations in other countries. The logic was airtight. In 1979, they released 30 small Asian mongooses on Amami Oshima Island. The plan was simple: let them breed, let them hunt, let them solve the snake problem naturally. As a bonus, I'm going to ask you a simple question. Are you a naturally curious person? If you're watching, I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. This space is made for people like us. To ensure you're always part of this community and receive all our latest discoveries, you just need to do one thing: subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to stay connected with us. Okay, now that you're part of our Legion of the Curious, let's move on to the next item. They wake up with the sun, spend their day exploring and eating, then sleep at night. Habu snakes are nocturnal. They hide in their dens during the day and come out to hunt after dark. The predator and prey were living on completely opposite schedules. The mongooses were going to bed just as the snakes were waking up. They were sharing an island but never actually meeting each other. Even if their schedules had aligned, there was a second issue nobody had considered. Hunting snakes is hard work. They're fast, they're dangerous, and even a mongoose with venom resistance doesn't want to get bitten if it can avoid it. Every snake hunt carries risk. Meanwhile, the island was packed with easier options. Mice scurrying through the grass, rabbits hopping around in the open, birds nesting in low branches, ground-dwelling eggs just sitting there waiting to be eaten. From the mongoose perspective, the choice was obvious. Why risk fighting a venomous snake when there's a rabbit right there that can't fight back at all? The mongooses made the smart call. They ignored the dangerous prey and feasted on everything else. By 1993, the situation had gone from not working to completely out of control. The original 30 mongooses had multiplied into roughly 10,000. The Ministry of Environment sounded the alarm, but the damage was already spreading. The island now had two problems instead of one. They still had the deadly snakes, and they had 10,000 hungry mongooses eating everything they could catch. But calling it two problems was generous, because what was actually happening was so much worse. The real victims. While everyone focused on the mongoose versus snake situation, these aren't ordinary rabbits. Scientists call them living fossils because they're the last survivors of an ancient rabbit lineage that used to spread across Asia. Thousands of years ago, these rabbits lived on the mainland. Climate change, predators, and competition wiped them out everywhere except two tiny islands. The Amami rabbit had survived ice ages. It had outlasted volcanic eruptions and countless other extinctions. It had persisted for millions of years. Then the mongooses showed up. These ancient rabbits had no idea what to do. They'd never needed to run from predators. They'd never developed the defensive behaviors that mainland rabbits use. When a mongoose approached, the Amami rabbit didn't recognize the danger until it was too late. The mongoose attacks were devastating. The rabbit population crashed. A species that had survived for millions of years was suddenly on the edge of extinction, and it happened in just a couple of decades. But the rabbits weren't alone in their suffering. The Amami spiny rat, another species found nowhere else on Earth, faced the same problem. So did roughly 15 other species that were unique to this island. Animals that had evolved over unimaginable stretches of time were disappearing in years. The mongooses weren't just hunting for food either. They were eating bird eggs, which meant entire bird species couldn't reproduce fast enough to replace their losses. Every egg destroyed was one less bird that would grow up to have babies of its own. The forest was getting quieter as the bird populations collapsed. Scientists documented the destruction, and the numbers were horrifying. The numbers tell the story. 30 mongooses in 1979. Over 10,000 by the late 1990s. That's more than a 300-fold increase in about 20 years. Each mongoose needed to eat daily. None of them were picky. Island ecosystems are particularly vulnerable to this kind of invasion. When animals evolve in isolation, they develop traits that work perfectly for their environment. But they don't develop defenses against predators that don't belong there. It's like a computer system that's never been connected to the internet suddenly getting hit with every virus at once. The mongooses were eating everything: mammals, birds, reptiles, insects, eggs, fruit. If it could fit in a mongoose's mouth, it was food. Scientists studying the damage found heartbreaking patterns. The amami rabbits, once common throughout the island, had become rare sightings. The probability of encountering one in the wild had dropped dramatically. The spiny rats were disappearing even faster. Bird species were in crisis. The forest soundscape was changing as fewer birds survived to sing. This created ripple effects throughout the entire ecosystem. Birds eat insects and disperse seeds. Without birds, insect populations grew unchecked. Plants that depended on birds for seed distribution struggled to reproduce. The forest itself was changing. Local residents started realizing the officials quickly realized they needed a completely different approach. They brought in specialized traps designed specifically for mongooses. They developed toxic baits and chemical attractants that would lure mongooses from long distances. They installed motion sensor cameras throughout the forests to track mongoose movements. They even brought in search dogs trained to detect mongoose scent. These dogs could smell a mongoose from hundreds of meters away and could track them to their dens in areas humans would never find. All of this technology was expensive. All of it required trained personnel to operate and maintain. The government was spending millions, but they had no choice. The alternative was watching a UNESCO World Heritage Site lose its most precious inhabitants forever. The real breakthrough came in 2005 when local residents formed a group called the Amami Mongoose Busters. The name sounds like something from a movie, but these were serious people doing dangerous work. They combined local knowledge of the island with professional wildlife management techniques. The Mongoose Busters set up 30,000 traps across the island. Think about that number, 30,000 traps. Each one had to be placed strategically, checked regularly, and maintained constantly. The team had to hike into remote forests in brutal heat and humidity. Some areas were so isolated it took hours just to reach them. But the work was paying off. Slowly. The traps were catching mongooses. The search dogs were finding dens. The population numbers were finally starting to drop. It wasn't fast, it wasn't easy, but it was working. The Long War. Year after year, the Mongoose Busters continued their mission, setting traps, checking cameras, searching forests. It was exhausting work that never ended. Catch 100 mongooses, and there were always more hiding somewhere. But the numbers were changing. Thousands became hundreds. The native wildlife started recovering. Amami rabbit sightings increased. Bird species began breeding successfully again. The forest was slowly coming back to life. Local residents noticed the difference. The sounds were returning. The rabbits were appearing in areas where they hadn't been seen in years. Hope was building. But the Mongoose Busters knew they couldn't stop until every single mongoose was gone. One pregnant female could restart the entire problem. They had to achieve complete eradication, or all their work would be wasted. By 2015, mongoose captures had become rare events. Motion sensor cameras went weeks without detecting any mongoose activity. The search dogs struggled to find fresh scent trails. The end was approaching, but confirming total eradication would take years of monitoring. Victory. April 2018. The last mongoose was captured on Amami Oshima Island. Then, nothing. No more images on cameras, no more scent trails, no more captures. In 2024, after years of careful monitoring, the experts made it official. Based on all available data, mongoose had been completely eliminated from Amami Oshima Island. The Japanese Ministry of Environment confirmed it. The island was mongoose-free. This was a massive achievement. According to wildlife experts, only 9 successful mongoose eradications have ever been documented worldwide. Amami Oshima was the largest island where this had been accomplished. The final count was stunning. Over the course of the eradication program, approximately 32,000 mongooses were captured, from 30 original animals to 32,000 removed. That ratio tells you everything about how badly things had spiraled. The cost was enormous. Millions of dollars spent on traps, cameras, dogs, and personnel salaries. Years of dedicated work by the mongoose busters and government officials. But here's the twist that makes this story even more absurd. The original snake problem that started everything? It got solved. But not because of the mongooses. By 2020, Habu snake bites had dropped to around 60 per year, down from 400 in 1980. Even better, there hadn't been a single death from a snake bite since 1992. This improvement happened because of better medical infrastructure, more accessible antivenom, and people learning to take proper precautions. The mongooses contributed absolutely nothing to reducing the snake population. They failed completely at their assigned job. They succeeded only in creating a disaster that took 25 years and tens of millions of dollars to fix. The lessons. The mongoose disaster on Amami Oshima taught some brutal lessons about what happens when humans try to solve ecological problems by introducing new species. First lesson: ecosystems are complicated. They're not simple machines where you can swap out parts and expect everything to work. They're more like massive networks where every species connects to dozens of others in ways that aren't obvious until something breaks. Second lesson: invasive species don't follow the script. The mongooses were supposed to hunt snakes. Instead, they hunted everything else because it was easier and safer. Animals do what's best for them, not what's convenient for human plans. Third lesson: acting fast. But Amami Oshima is also a success story. It proves that even massive ecological disasters can be reversed with enough dedication, resources, and time. The mongoose busters showed that humans can fix their mistakes if they're willing to put in the work. The island is healing now. The Amami rabbits are breeding. The birds are singing. The ecosystem is finding its balance again. It's not the same as it was before 1979, and it never will be. But it's alive and it's recovering. That recovery came at a massive cost. 25 years of work, millions of dollars, 32,000 mongooses captured one by one, all to undo a decision that seemed perfectly logical in 1979. The Habu snakes are still there, by the way. They never left. But people learned to live with them through better medicine and common sense, which was probably the right solution all along. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem isn't to introduce something new. Sometimes the best solution is to deal with the problem directly, even if it's harder and takes longer, because the shortcut might lead somewhere far worse than where you started. The mongooses taught that lesson the hard way. The island paid the price. But the lesson stands. When you mess with ecosystems, nature always gets the last word, and that word is usually more complicated than you expected. Now, I'm leaving the next step of your journey up to you. On your screen, you'll see 2 of our best videos. Choose your curiosity and click on the one that calls to you now. Well, that's it, and until next time, Curious One.